All right, howdy folks. So today we're going to talk about the updates for the CDS Hooks Sandbox. So we'll just get right into it, I think. There we go. All right, that's me, Chris Schuler, Senior Software Developer at Smile Digital Health. Tech Lead in the Standards Department, have experience with CQ authoring, measure development, developing and implementing CDS and IG authoring. So I like to party, basically. And there's my contact. So if you want to email me or get in touch with me on Zulip, that'd be awesome. Always happy to engage with folks. So we'll kind of just do a really brief overview of what CDS Hooks is. So the TLDR is it's just how would you, it's just an event action, trigger action type of workflow within an environment. So if you say wanted to integrate with medication select or order select, what would happen is you would, if your provider within your environment selected a medication, that would then trigger a CDS Hooks, which would then call a remote service that would run some kind of logic that would then return some CDS cards or some suggestions or information to the user that they could then act upon, just as in having more information or maybe following a suggestion, like say if your medication order had a generic brand that was cheaper, then you could change your order to a cheaper brand for your for a budget purpose for the patient, or maybe you'd open up a smart app to continue your workflow in that. So that's kind of just a basic overview. So within this is the a screenshot of the existing sandbox. So how that would happen for RX view or order select in here is you would just pull down this drop down for medication, select a medication, and then as soon as you selected that, you would get some kind of, would call out to the CDS service, the logic would run, and some action would take place. And like I explained just previously, it says, hey, you can save some money. You can save $426 by switching to a generic brand. So then you could select that button, and it would just change your order immediately to that. And so that's how that would work. And then, so to discuss kind of why I'm interested in the sandbox is I'm the kind of the tech lead and maintainer of the CDC clinical practice guideline for prescribing opioids. It's an implementation guide. It was a joint effort by the CDC and ONC. It has 12 computable recommendations. And the computable content is modeled to work with CDS Hooks directly. And we've been working on it for the past 5 or so years. And it's been tested at several pilot sites. And we're just starting now to kind of get that into production. And so it's getting pretty exciting. And so what we wanted, so our motivation behind, updating the sandbox was that we wanted to provide a sandbox for users to interact with our content. And after a lot of back and forth on which the best way to accomplish that is we decided that, why not give back to the community, use existing things that are in place, and let's use the CDS Hooks, the existing sandbox as it is. And so there were some definite obstacles with that. So the CDS Hooks Sandbox is a super cool project, but unfortunately it hadn't been very well maintained in the past couple years. So it had some extensive code rot. It had some, some data default backend services like the CDS service and the Fire server. And it also it didn't have the order sign hook, which we actually really needed. So for the code rot, there was, just very little maintenance. We had like 1,500 plus vulnerabilities, lots of deprecated functionality. Several use cases didn't work, like PAMA and the card demo. So we had that issue. And then we also had really old backend services that also were not extensible. So you couldn't just add your own, if you had a plan definition or something that defined your CDS service, you can just push that to the backend service and just run with it. So you had to basically stand up your own backend services in order to really test it out, which is kind of what was meant to be, but it'd be nice if that was also in place so you could just do it if you wanted or not. And then, of course, we really need the order sign hook. As you can see, 10 of our 12 recommendations actually require the order sign hook to function, so we needed to have that in place as well. And so our solutions were to, for the code route, were to migrate to Webpack 5, conduct a dependency audit, and resolve all of those dependency issues and security vulnerabilities, and fix the outdated use cases, like update the card demo page, remove the PAMA use case as it doesn't seem to be relevant much anymore or supported. So we also deployed 2 back-end services. So we deployed our own Happy Fire server with R4, and that we pre-populated that with several test patients. We also deployed a CDS Hooks service, which includes all the content necessary to run one of our recommendations, which is recommendation 10. And then we added the RX sign tab. So this is the order sign functionality. So it basically is very similar to the RX view. It just adds a few more things. We need some additional elements like the expected supply duration, and we needed a sign order button, basically, to trigger the hook. And we also worked on some additional enhancements, and that was so the CDS Sandbox had some pretty cool things with query parameters in the URL, where you could pass in certain things like your patient ID, which screen you wanted to be on, which hook you were working with, which medication you wanted to prescribe, and you could put those in the URL, and that would just kind of, fill out your workflow for you, so you popped up on the page with everything filled out, and you didn't have to go through the UI to select all those things. So it gave you the ability to kind of save your scenario, save how you had things configured, and be able to share that. So that was a cool idea, so we extended upon it, and we added in some things to be able to, add in supply duration. We're going to also add in things to whether or not the order's been signed already, so that will just pop up as it's been completed and signed, or, and as well as which service you want to actually run. So if you want to run the opioid Rec 10, you would be able to add in your URL a query parameter that just says service with the service ID, and that would pop up immediately, and select that so you don't have to go to the drop-down and do any of that. We also added in a patient selection drop-down that's populated from the Fire server that you choose. So before you kind of had to know your patient ID and input it in there. So we've added in just a quality of life there that just populates from the server and allows you to select the ID you want to test with. So our future enhancements are to continue extending query parameters and scenarios, enable users to actually export those scenarios. So currently you kind of have to know how to construct that URL to share it. So it'd be better if there was just a button there that just says export your URL, or your scenario, and it'll just give you a URL that you can share with folks, just to kind of share a scenario that you've built in the sandbox, basically. We're also working to migrate to better supported UI component frameworks. So it previously and currently actually uses Cerner's Terra UI components, which have just recently, like in the past couple weeks, actually gone to public archive. So that's project's basically at end of life and will no longer be supported. So we're going to be migrating to something else, obviously. And then we're also going to add some additional recommendations from the opioid IG, and also add in some more test scenarios, and just work on streamlining the user experience. So that's things like enable multiple scenarios or services to run at a time, because currently you have to just kind of select the service you want to run, and you can only do it one at a time. So it'd be cool to just have, all your medication select services run at once and give you a stack of cards that you can go through. And then also enhance configuration options and continue to offer some quality of life improvements when you're working through the UI there. All right, so let's go with a quick demo here of the current. Let's see, all right. So this is our current fork of the sandbox. It's available at the CQ Framework GitHub organization. And we have in our wiki here a little bit of a user guide. It just kind of has a few pre-built scenarios that you can run through. And this will work at a staging site we set up. So we currently have about 75% of the code that we've updated pulled into the existing sandbox. We're working on getting that deployed. So for now, we just have this staging site set up where you can kind of test out and see the updates we've made. So if we just select this scenario here, it's just a really simple scenario for recommendation 10. In here, it just selects patient ID and the RX sign and which hook we're going to use, and the prescribed medication and the supply duration. And this scenario should just return some empty set of cards. So as soon as you select sign order, you'll see that no cards were returned, and that's expected. So now we can go back and select another scenario. So this one here, this is a scenario where it will recommend a UDS is performed for the patient. So you can just click on this scenario and then hit sign order, and then we'll get this back. And so what's going on here is the service was called in the back end, and it said, hey, this patient hasn't had a UDS in the past 12 months, so you should probably do that since you're prescribing opioids. And then this provides you with some links that you can check out as well. This will take you directly to the guideline, the CDC guideline for recommendation 10, in case you wanted to gather more information, and as well as provide you a link to the PDF of that guideline as well. And then kind of for our final one here, this one is a test for recommendation 10 when unexpected results are found for the patient. So this would be things like, a patient was prescribed some substance that didn't show up in their UDS, or they weren't prescribed a substance that showed up in their UDS. So if we click on this and hit sign order, what we'll get back is actually an HTML table that kind of runs through what substances were found in their UDS and whether it was an unexpected positive or negative. And then gives you just some footnotes that says, hey, we found a possible unprescribed substance and exactly which substance was found. And and just gives you some more guidance as well down here where you can get some more information on positive, unexpected results and unexpected negatives and things like that. And so, so this is what we've done with the sandbox, and kind of to show the other bit with the patient drop-down. So this used to be just, you'd have to know the patient ID, and now that allows you to kind of, select everything that's in the service. So yeah, that's what I've had. That's what I got. Did I do it too quick?
Yeah, you're good. You have 8 minutes left.
I do, okay. Well, hopefully there's lots of questions.
Have you considered using AI agents to potentially enrich the CDS hook?
Well, that would be awesome to do. So the main focus we had for this project was just to really get the sandbox back in working order, right? Like it was, clear out the cobwebs and all that, and get it back working again, so that smart folks like yourself could come in and do that maybe, and or it'd be in a position where someone could come in and extend upon it and build. It's a really cool project. It's set up really well. They have a lot of good documentation on how to extend and add hooks and set up actions within the workflow and things like that. So it's really easy to extend. It just needs some love, and so I think we've given it a good amount of that, and it's in a good place now where we can really start working on it and fleshing things out and getting people excited. All right.
More questions?
I guess in a similar vein, but different functionality. Like, have you talked about like system actions at all for like suggestion cards? Because I know that's big in the CRD space right now, and I think not right now in your sandbox.
Yeah, I don't think those are currently supported. But yeah, it would, like I said, we're just trying to get it there to where it can be extended upon, for sure. Yeah.
Thank you. Really nice presentation and demo. One of the issue we are having with the current CDS Hooks Sandbox is when you actually enter the discovery endpoint, right, in the starting. So what it does basically, it just calls all the services which are part of that discovery endpoint, and then it just fills up the page with all the cards which got responded, and then as a user, you are confused because you don't know which cards are part of which service. And is there any way we can actually disable or configure that on the fly, the number of services which you want to call, instead of just entering the discovery endpoint and just calls, it should wait, okay, it should give the user access, okay, hey, these are the 5 services as part of that discovery endpoint, and just select one of them, and then only call that particular service.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's currently, right now you can do that, right? Like you can enable or disable a service that you don't want to use, right? Or you can just straight up delete it, right? From the actual workflow. Is that what you're asking? From the configuration point? Yeah. And yeah, that's kind of like I was talking about kind of like the opposite of that actually, which was, I think sometimes it's a little frustrating that you can only do one service at a time with the current sandbox, right? And I think being able to run like 5 or 6 services at the same time when you trigger some kind of hook, right? For, order sign or order select, right? It would be cool if every service ran, right? Like kind of how it would in an EHR typically, and then you would get your feedback all at once instead of having to kind of run through each service and go through the kind of rigmarole of choosing your service to run and then running it and getting your card, kind of have a more seamless experience like that. And that would also include kind of the enabled, disabled mechanic that's in here, which was, if you don't want to do that, then you can just disable whichever services you don't want to run, and just get back the feedback you're looking for.
We had a different experience basically. We need to call for all the services and use the card from the response here. And then here also, for the user, our information team was more confused with, okay, this card is part of which response of the service, which service it was part of. And that's where they were, okay, let me allow just only one service at a time so that I can have look at the response here and the cards on this side. And if I want to try another service, I should be able to explicitly do that.
Yeah, and there's definitely such a thing too as feedback fatigue, right? Where you just get too much pop-ups and things, and you're just like, I don't know what to do with all this. And I mean, most CHRs would have some kind of way to configure when the service is called, right? It's not like every time I choose a medication, I don't want this to run. I want this to run when I choose an opioid or when I choose, aspirin or something, right? Yeah. Totally get that.
Okay, I had my steps 3 times going back and forth, but I think there was a question on this side. It's not your fault. It's okay.
Hi. Yeah, my question actually is not about sandbox, but more production. Is how is the process to define the recommendations, and how can you add that? What is the process to add that in your backend service?
Yeah. So, there's many ways. Like the FHIR way, right, would be you'd write up your logic in CQL, right, and then you would have a library that contains that CQL, right, and that would have all your decision logic in it, right. That things, your conditions, what triggers this hook, right, what triggers this suggestion, and then what you would do is you would roll all that up into a plan definition resource in FHIR, which would then kind of discuss your actions that you would take, right? So for each action, you would have a condition that would, if true or false, would then do something, right? And it would be like return a card or return some suggestions or just some information or nothing at all.
So basically the standard to have the recommendations and rules and everything, it's just the SQL.
Well, that's kind of like the FHIR prescribed way to do it. I mean, the current sandbox actually has a lot of their suggestions and things are just in JavaScript, right? just in a JavaScript file, basically, that just runs the logic and returns it. So, I mean, you can implement the CDS however you want. Like, I use Fire, and that's how I've done all the opioid recommendations that I'm kind of demoing here. And that's, I think, the more, reusable and shareable way to do things, right? And kind of one of the frustrations with the current sandbox is that you can't, shoot it over a JavaScript file to then add your service directly to the back end. Yeah.
Thank you all for that. We're through our time, and before we thank for this presentation, I want to point out that we're going to take a group photo now in the Memorial Hall. So I want to invite all of you. It's at 5:45 in the schedule, but we're actually going to do it now. So afterwards, everyone can go for dinner. So please go there, be on the group photo, but not before we've thanked Christopher for the presentation.